Okay, great. Okay, so welcome to Artscape to Heartscape. This is a time when I love to invite artists to come and meet Convergence, and not only have the artists meet Convergence, but Convergence to meet other artists. Today, I have to be honest with you, it's the first time that we have an actual writer, an author who is joining us today. I had the pleasure of meeting Sophronia this past summer. I took a creative writing class with her for the week. And that was just, it was, I came home, and my husband can attest to this. I came home, I was so, I haven't been the same since, because I immediately got myself with a writing group, and I started taking my writing even more seriously as a result of being in Sophronia's class. And so, Sophronia, welcome to Convergence. I am so happy and honored that you have taken the time out of your busy schedule to be with us. But I want it so much for our community to, if they don't know you, I want them to know you, because I felt like when I got to know Sophronia Scott, it was like it unlocked another level of my heart and my writing and my art, that I didn't expect. And so thank you for taking time out to be with us. This is just a conversation. I want I just want people to know you, get to know you. So, as an author, can you talk to us about what does a day in the life of Sophronia Scott look like? Because all of the wonderful things that you're doing, with your writing, and I know, well, you can give us more information about what you do, but what does the day in the life of an author look like? I can tell you what it looks like for a writer, I mean, a musician and an artist, but for a writer, what does a day look like for you?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And I want to let everybody know that she was so serious about this that we made this date back in July, I think. So I'm glad to finally be here after seeing this on my calendar for months and months. Um, so what does a day look like? Uh,
Hmm.
it is not it's not the same all the time. So I am a project-oriented person. So whatever is coming up is the thing that's at the forefront and the thing getting my attention most. And that can be difficult because right now, for example, I'm working on my next novel, but at the same time, I'm also, well, you know this, I'll tell everyone else, I'm the director of a low residency MFA program, that's Master of Fine Arts and Creative Writing. And we have residencies every 6 months. And our winter residency is coming up at the end of this month. So, I got some writing time in today, but tomorrow I need to be working on the residency schedule. We're still accepting students into the program. There are applications to process. I have meetings at work. I trying to maintain my friendships. I'm having tea with somebody tomorrow, and working out, right? So I make sure that I work out at least 3 times a week. But in December, this coming month, I'm going to be making a commitment to try to work out every day and not wait until January. So, I tend to get up at about 5:30 and either get into the gym. I have workout equipment here at home, or I'm at the desk writing. My office at the college at Alma College is 45 minutes away. So days that I'm going to be in the office, I'm usually out the door by 6:30 or 7. So it's different every single day. I do a planner. I just did my planner for the week. I plan weekly so that the things that I need to do, I make sure are somewhere on my schedule this week. So this week it is, writing and exercising, and then knowing I have that to-do list for the residency to work through every single day. Um, It may look chaotic if you look at it on paper, but somehow things get done.
It's
And as
done.
long as things are getting done, I think I'm doing okay.
Well, talk to us about your writing.
Yeah,
I know that you said you're working on a new novel.
yeah.
I'm curious to understand like what inspires you to write on a particular topic. Like I am right now reading the Wild, Beautiful, and Free,
Mhm.
and which I absolutely love. I can't wait to find out what really happens to the character. But how did that particular project come about? And where do you get your inspiration?
You know, inspiration, and you know this as a musician, you have to you have to put inspiration in order for inspiration to come out, which means
Yes.
you must be consuming art, you must be living a life, reading books, watching movies, going to museums, which I love to do, um, because you don't know where that inspiration is going to come from, right? So the inspiration for Wild, Beautiful, and Free, I actually got when I was 13 years old and read Jane Eyre for the first time. And Jane Eyre changed my life. That character taught me that I have agency in the world. Even if you have nothing, you can have agency and make your life what you want it to be. And that message has been with me throughout my life. And I've consumed practically every version of Jane Eyre that exists, including
Hmm.
seeing the Broadway musical multiple times. And the idea had always been on my mind. If this character, this white character written in the 1800s, inspired me so much, what if this character, someone like her, were a person of color? What can be done? How many people can I inspire if I create that character?
Hmm.
And that was at the heart of it. So that this book has been on my mind for years, and it took time. It took um, the right, finally having it stew in my brain for all these years to finally have the opportunity to sit down and bring it about.
Wow.
So the idea can be there forever and ever, but they usually with fiction, there's usually something that I am trying to do, a bigger picture, and that book, I love that book because so much of what I wanted to do, made its way into it.
That's great. So when like you've kept that was in you since the time you were 13,
Mhm.
when do you know it's ready to come out?
It's almost like the character starts talking to me, right? It's almost like you can't help but come out now. It's like, oh, I guess this is what's next, right? This is the thing that's bubbling up, so to speak. And fiction, and it's also a bit about where I am in my life. I probably couldn't have written this book 10, 15 years ago. I have different abilities now. I've had different experiences, and I just feel um, that I was ready to say certain things.
Hmm.
And it's the difference between fiction and nonfiction. Like when I write nonfiction, I tend to be answering a question. How do I read Thomas Merton? How do you raise a child of faith? I'm answering a question. But when I write fiction, I have something to say about the world. And in fiction, this is the way I do it. So it takes a while to put together the story and to marinate the concept because it can't be, you know, a reader won't accept a story if it sounds like you're being told what to do and you're
Right.
but but um but if I can make it real, if I can just show this is what it looks like, this is what it feels like, right? Um, you know, even Christ spoke in parables, right? Knowing that if a story can be absorbed, that the person will take something away from it.
Hmm.
Right,
Nice.
right.
And that's what you were really trying to get us to do in our class. Like I love the fact that I think what happened to me as a result of being in the class was it unlocked something in me to go deeper in the story. I'm writing this memoir, but
right.
it was not really just about telling the story. It was there was there's something in me, and the reason why I felt like I was stuck and why I took the class was because what you helped me to see was that there's more in here that needs to come out that I'm trying to say, and I had to really spend time figuring out what it was that this story is pulling out of me because there's something more that I have to say, and I
Yeah.
love that. I love.
Yeah. So to bring everyone else along, just so you know, this workshop was that I did with Adrian was a nonfiction workshop.
Right.
And several people in the class were working on memoir. And an important aspect of memoir is to not just tell a story. Oh, this thing happened to me. Oh, this terrible thing happened, or this amazing thing happened. The story is only just the beginning. The thing that makes it worth reading, the thing that makes it a gift to the reader is understanding what you have made of this thing that happened
Mm,
to you. How did I come through this trauma? Who am I because of this? Why do I even want to write about this now? And when you understand that, it takes on a different level of meaning. And the reader can be invited into it because they can see themselves in the story when they can walk through it with you. And if you haven't done that for yourself, it's not going to show up on the page.
right.
So it takes some thinking, self-inquiry, asking yourself, well, why am I writing about this? And why is it important to me? And well, what is this about? You know, what is this, what place does it take up inside of me? Right? And really looking at it from a different point of view, like researching your life almost,
Hmm.
right? And it becomes something much different. It's a richer piece of writing because of that.
Right. So do you find yourself, it's like you're always changing. You're because you're on this constant journey of asking yourself the question or rediscovering something that you haven't thought about. Can you talk a little more about how that impacts you as a writer?
Well, I think that the best way to do that is to talk about, and I think I gave this example in the workshop, about how when you write nonfiction, especially an essay, you might think you're writing about one
One
thing,
thing.
but then you discover something else that you may not have even known was there,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it leads you down this road. Sometimes it can be a scary road, but something good can come of it. And the example that I discuss in class is from the essay that's in my essay collection. I have an essay collection called Love's Long Line. And there's an essay called A Fur for Annie Pearl. And it's when I started writing that essay, all I wanted to do was tell the story of me trying to find a fur coat for this elderly woman who asked me for one.
Mm,
I was home in Ohio not long after my father died. This was a woman who had known my father as a young man. My mom said that she was asking about me. I didn't know who Annie Pearl was. And she's like, Annie Pearl wants to see you. So I finally go, Lorain, Ohio, this little house. And this woman, this 80-something-year-old woman comes running out, says, my baby's back. And I'm like, what? Who is this? And she starts telling me about my father, your father, Bessie Scott brought you here the moment your mom came from the hospital. He had you wrapped up and said, Pearl, I have something for you. And it was you. And and I just thought you were so pretty and so wonderful. And I was just kissing you. And your father said, Pearl, give me my baby back before you eat her up. And I was just totally enthralled with her. And at one point during our visit, she said, you live in New York City, don't you? And I said, yes, ma'am, I do. And she says, can you get me one of them fur coats? And I knew exactly what she wanted. I knew she wanted to be like Louise Jefferson, that she wanted to put on that fur coat and go strutting down the aisle at church. And at that point, I would give her anything. And so I went back to New York and started trolling the thrift stores of the Upper East Side, looking for a
right.
discarded fur coat by a wealthy woman. And that story had been with me for years. And that's another story. It was on me. And I was like, I want to tell this story. And I'm writing it. But in the self-inquiry process, I have to ask, why is this so much on
Oh,
my mind
mhm. Right.
still, all this time? And I started thinking about how I don't feel this way in giving gifts to my mother. And how in that moment, as I was writing this essay, my mom was calling me and I hadn't answered her voicemail. And I started to think about how my mom is always wanting gifts. She was very childlike, and what are you getting me? What are you getting me? Her birthday was in January. What are you getting me? Even though it's Christmas, what are you getting me for my birthday? And and throughout my life, I realized that it was starting to feel like throwing something down a hole, that gift giving was meaningless. And the more I thought about this, and this was not long after, this was a few years after one of my sisters had passed away. And this sister had been her caregiver. And it occurred to me in the moment as I'm writing this essay that I was angry with my mother for the loss of my sister,
Mm,
that I felt that my sister had been a gift that was thrown down that hole. And I couldn't resolve that in the essay. I wrote about it in the essay because suddenly I realized this essay is really about my mom. It's about gift giving. It's about this complex relationship. And the essay doesn't even end with a resolution because I'm only just figuring this out. However, over the course of a couple of years, and actually I'm thinking about it, it was 10 years ago this Thanksgiving that
mm,
I finally did come to a resolution for myself with my mother. And and my mom died 5 years later, but I never would have gotten to that resolution if I
right
hadn't found that anger point that I didn't even know was there,
there.
right? So I
Wow.
could see it, I could work through it, I could sit with my mom and think about this and finally work through it. And that wouldn't have happened, right?
Wow.
So yeah, writing can be a powerful, scary thing, but you have to be willing to go there, so to speak, right?
Wow. You know, one of the things that we did talk about too in class is like in with your writing and what I've noticed, there is a thread of uh and just hearing you speak, because you were the keynote for the Glen, um where we met, and your faith is very, very strong in your writing, and it comes through in terms of like forgiveness, grace, like that is a definite theme in your work. Can you talk about your faith and how it has impacted your work?
Well, it's not always intentional,
Mm,
right? Who you are is just going to come out on the page. And so my faith is alive in me in that way. Someone asked about the faith in Wild, Beautiful, and Free, right? They were surprised that faith was in that book. And I'm like,
hmm
well, this is sort of a coming of age of a young woman. I don't see that happening without her wrestling with her faith at some point, as we all do, right? So to me, that's just, I don't know, the spiritual life is our lives, right? So that's going to be there at some point. So so it's a couple of things, Adrienne. First of all, I feel that my writing is my gift from God, right? And so it is, I must be about my Father's work. I'm going to be writing. But I never thought writing about faith would be part of that journey because to
hmm
me, my faith is very personal. I hold it very close to me. And it took a very close friend to convince me to write about, to write overtly about faith. And at first, I didn't see the value in it. I didn't understand why. Um, and I began to see that when I do write about faith, I somehow can put words to things that other people can't. And that's what I'm told, that you've said something that I've always wondered about and I had no words for it. And so I've been kind of just sort of picking my way through as a faith writer. Kind of not knowing what I'm doing. This is what I'm expressing. This is the question that I'm answering, or, you know, um, this is what I'm seeing right now. And it took me a long time to understand really what I do as a faith writer. And it came about because I was listening to a lecture by Barbara Brown Taylor, the writer. She has a wonderful talk, if you can find it online somewhere, where she talks about the language of beholding versus the language of belief. And she said the language of belief is the language that we currently in our society that we beat each other up with. We
Mm,
run around saying, what do you believe? What do you believe? What do you believe? And judging people accordingly. But the language of beholding is the language that she used when she was a pastor. She said, when I was pastoring with a person in need, I am in a language of beholding. I'm sitting with this person in the present moment, looking at, where they are and providing, listening and dignity and respect to where they are. Beholding, the here is where we are right now, behold.
mm,
And then she talked about how many times the word behold shows up in the Bible. Behold, behold. And she said, it seems like in order to believe, you must first behold.
mm,
And when there was just a bell that rang in my head when she said that, and I said, this is what I do as a faith writer. I kind of run around saying, behold, behold, look, did you see that? That was God at work. Did you see that?
right,
Behold, behold, right? Um, I talk about that in the book I wrote about Thomas Merton, The Seeker and the Monk, right?
right.
I show instances in my own life where I felt God showed up for me. Prayers answered when I didn't even know I was praying,
Mm,
right? So in a way, saying to someone, have you had this happen to you? Behold, did you see that? Behold, right? That God shows up in ways that we don't expect, but we don't know to look for it,
mm.
right? So that's what I do.
It's a beautiful thing. And you know, you wrote an essay in response to basically what was not being being spoken, when the 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 Newtown shooting, there was this response that I guess that you wrote. Um,
No, Adrian,
was
you have that a little confused.
okay. All right.
No, so Adrian mentioned, well, she made it mention, I live in Michigan now, but we've just moved here from Sandy Hook. And I lived in Sandy Hook, Connecticut for 20 years. And our son is a Sandy Hook survivor. He was present at the school during the shootings and he lost a dear friend. And what I talked about in the workshop with Adrian is that I couldn't write about it for
Right.
at least 3 years. For 3 years, I couldn't write about it. Um, but what finally unlocked me in that respect were the shootings at Charleston, in
Yes.
Charleston, South Carolina, right, where the young man went to that Bible study and murdered the people there.
Right.
And his name was Dylan Roof. And Roxane Gay wrote this essay in the New York Times called Why I Can't Forgive Dylan Roof, because she was kind of, bewildered by the words of forgiveness that so many of the family members were stating in some of the courtroom scenes. And I looked at that essay and I understood what she was doing and why she was doing it. And I kept seeing it get shared all over social media. And I was just waiting for someone to say something about, well, here's why forgiveness is important. Here's why forgiveness matters. And it wasn't happening. And it wasn't happening and it wasn't happening. And it bothered me. And I didn't realize how much it bothered me until I woke up one morning and I just knew I was about to write something. And I could hear like one of my mentors, my writing mentors in my head saying, now don't get too preachy, Scott. And I got up and I was in the kitchen making my son's breakfast and taking notes because I'm going to write something. And that's what I did. I wrote this essay called Notes from a Forgiving Heart. And it was for Roxane Gay. She was just to Roxane Gay. Notes from a Forgiving Heart. because here's why forgiveness is important. And here's why this forgiveness is really for you and not for this other person, right? And it just felt like a void. And I also, that's another thing I tend to do. I feel like I say the things that aren't being said. Okay,
Right.
so this needs to be said. I'm going to step in and say this.
Wow. Which was very, very powerful. Very powerful. So, Sophronia, let's go back a little bit. When did you
Yeah.
know that you were a writer? Were you writing as a kid?
Yes, I was writing as a kid, but not really knowing that that's what I was doing, right? I didn't really have, I just knew that I loved books
Yeah.
and I wanted to write down the words that were in the books. I wanted to draw pictures for the books. And you should also know that my father was illiterate. He never learned to
Which
read.
which really blows my mind. It's
Yeah.
just amazing.
So it's not like writing was a discussed vocation, right? In our home. Um, so to me, work was about, remember I told you I was thinking about agency. How do I control my life? Um, because as far as my father was concerned, it was like, why can't you find a man to take care of you kind of thing. But to me, it was like, okay, I need to leave. I need to go to college. I need to be able to get a job where I could take care of myself. So to me, that was about being pre-med and becoming a doctor. So that was the thing that was on my radar.
Mm.
And but I was still writing in college. I was still taking writing classes because I missed it. I loved it. And also I had this thing in my mind that whenever I wrote, good things seem to have happened to me.
Mm.
So I'm gonna keep doing this. And finally I had a teacher who said, "What are you doing? Don't you realize you're good enough to get paid for this?" And I was shocked. And he led me to a recruiter from Time Magazine. And they hired me out of college and kind of raised me as a writer and a journalist. But yeah, it was and when I see these weird steps and how it all came together, that only for me affirms the fact that okay, God was at work there, making sure that I
Right.
was doing the thing that I was supposed to be doing and not over here,
Right.
right? Getting on a different distracted path.
Amazing. Amazing. Do you mind telling us what are you working on now? I mean, other than
I
do you do that or no? As a
well at this moment, what I'm doing, like I could tell you the basic of it, but it wouldn't make sense. Like I could say, well, I'm writing this historical fiction that takes place during World War II, right?
okay.
That's a very basic thing. But what I'm trying to do with it is so much more complicated than that. And when I and so that wouldn't make sense to you. But I can tell you that one of the things I'm reading right now is Journal of a Novel.
Oh,
And what this is this is John Steinbeck's notes and letters that he wrote while he was writing East of Eden. And East of Eden has always been interesting to me. And I only just found out about this book last week. Someone in Malibu told me about it. Um, East of Eden is on my bookshelf, and it's always fascinated me because there is a book reviewer quoted on the cover saying that this is a book where the writer has brought all of his talent to bear.
mm,
And you could tell, and he has produced this book. This journal, even from the beginning, he's talking about exactly that, how this is going to be the book of his life, that he wants to bring everything to bear and create this amazing book. And I find it so amazing when someone can write with that kind of intention, right? And so I'm reading this to inspire me because on the surface, it may look like, oh, I'm, writing another historical fiction, but I'm really trying to do something different and amazing. I have no idea if it's going to come off that way, but we shall see.
that's exciting. That's exciting. So it's kind of like, you're willing in every project, you're willing to be free to allow it to run its course
Yeah.
and not the course that you think it should
Yeah.
run, but like your run its course. And I think that's kind of like what I love happens when I'm doing music or if I'm painting. I kind of like just I want to have fun. I love to have fun doing doing this
Yeah.
type of work. It's just, it really inspire that is my inspiration. I just enjoy it so much that I don't even feel like I'm working. I just feel like I'm just being a kid and having
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. And you have to let it be that way.
Right.
And no matter how you work, um, I don't know if we discussed this in the workshop, but there's so many people who there's that debate of, are you a plotter or a pantster?
Right.
Like, do you do outlines or do you just write and fly by the seat of your pants? But people think outlines are like straitjackets or something, but they're not. I mean,
Right.
it's just a place to start. This book right now is nowhere near. I did a pretty elaborate outline for this book, and right now it is nowhere near what that outline was. So you have to let the book become what it's going to become. You have to go out on the wire and say, oh wow, when I initially thought about this, I was being too tame. I can go
Mm,
further with this.
right.
This character could be something much more daring.
Yeah.
Right.
And I love the fact that you're willing to allow yourself to be surprised,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's what we do as
Yeah.
artists, writers, musicians, to be surprised is such a good thing.
Yeah.
I let me see. I always like to make sure that I am uh leaving enough time. I mean, I love when our convergence community takes the time out. And if you have any questions that you want to ask Sophronia in terms of her process or what makes her tick, I'd love for you to jump in. So anyone anyone have any questions for Sophronia?
Anita here. I've got a quick one. So, Sophronia, it's so interesting about Steinbeck and particularly East of Eden. I believe he drew a lot from his own childhood, as scary as that may sound,
Yes,
in
he
his
did.
book. How has your childhood or your experiences influenced the book that you're working on now about World War II?
Well, first of all, as I said earlier, we can't separate who we are. Like aspects of us are going to show up throughout our, everything. Um, Even though I thought I was done writing about my father years ago, aspects of my father still show up in all of the work. Um, in this in this book, it'll probably show up in one of the characters. There's something I'm particularly developing. This book has three main characters, and one of them is an atheist. And I've never written an atheist before, but there is something about her that believes in the human spirit. And I think that is something that I have had since I was a child. And and whenever I have felt truly hurt by the world, it has been that disappointment in something in the way that humanity has behaved. And I see that's going to come to the fore in this character. That's going to happen. But yeah, it's going to be, and what will happen to her is nowhere near anything that happened to me. But that underlying feeling of spirit, right, is going to inform her and her love, both her love and her response. Does that
Hmm.
make sense?
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
But does that make sense?
Eh, yes.
You
Yes.
know, yeah. I think we try so hard to we think that we have to write something totally original, something totally amazing. But to make it really grounded, it has to begin with something that is already within us.
Mm,
And and I think we talked about this in the workshop, Adrian, that we all have some sort of immortal wound, something
hmm.
that we cannot get over, and that in one way or another is informing our work.
Right.
And if we can recognize it, we have the opportunity to kind of live into it and probe it and create from it. And
Right.
that's that can be an amazing thing.
Exactly. Definitely. Steve.
I
Steve?
was I was gonna comment on structure and freedom and all these other things, but boy, that was a doozy you just gave us on
Yep.
everybody has an immortal wound, and boy, is that true. If we could find meaning and purpose and redemption out of those. So thank you for that reminder. But my question is, you sound like a very structured person and you flourish through that structure. What is your minimum time, however, for a good stretch of writing, a block for writing for you, so that you do have structure, but you have a lot of freedom within that structure. So you don't feel like you're running around from one task to the next. I got to do such and such amount of words this morning, and then I have to go to the grocery store or what have you. How do you, what's good for you? What's your minimum block for creativity to begin to flow?
Okay, I'm going to throw out this is going to be very random. Let's say 2 hours. Okay. Because what I mean when I said that I was a project-oriented person, I'm not just going to sit down and try to pump out 1,500 words or something like that. I think some of you may know NaNoWriMo. It just ended the National Novel Writers Month. And if you don't know it, it's a thing where people all over the world are trying to write a 50,000 word novel during the month of November. And that works out to about 1,600 words a day. I have tried to do that. I tried to do it again this past month. I will get going. I will, maybe be able to do it 3, 4 days, maybe 5 days, but then life gets in the way. And that doesn't mean I'm not writing, but I'm not doing 1,600 words a day, right? So I tell people, the novels that I started in NaNoWriMo all got finished, but they didn't get finished in November. But what I do like to do, Steve, is I try to aim for a specific task. Okay, so today I'm working on the conversation that Babe and Ford have when this is their first significant conversation, the first time he takes her out, right? So I'm going to be working today on that. I don't know how long it's going to take me to finish it, but that is the goal for today, is to finish that scene. Maybe I'm working on an entire chapter. I'm going to be working on the part where this other person decides to enlist in the army, right? So what is going to happen? What are the conversations that happen around that? So to me, that's what it's about. I'm working on pieces, and eventually all of the pieces will come together into one full thing. But and maybe that comes from me being a journalist. It's that it's not like we had to produce a certain amount of words, but I had an article to write, right? And I'm trying to write that article before the deadline. And however I do it, it will get done. But that's what I do. I just, what is the goal for today?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Denise.
Thank you. I am really curious. You mentioned early on about self-care, taking care of yourself, going to the gym. So I, in the last couple of months, have found that to be the most difficult thing for me to do. Life happens, and sometimes I go, oh, I just got to go right to the computer and write down whatever I need to do or work on this project. I get so excited about those things. But then when I'm done with that, the self-care doesn't happen. And I need the self-care. I need to do the yoga. I need to have meditation time and prayer time, because that feeds my soul and it also takes care of my body. So I'm just curious how that fits in for you. I know you get up early, but I'm just wondering what happens. Do you ever miss a day or 2 or 3 or more? I mean, how do you manage that when you get a little overloaded?
First of all, it helps that I'm a Peloton person. So I have the Peloton app, right? So I can see at a glance when I have and haven't worked out. the other thing is that it can track any type of movement that I do other than on the machines. So if I'm walking through the Atlanta airport, which if some of you know it, is a pretty long walk, right? I hit the app and turn it on so that it's tracking my walking and my mileage, right? So it's always on my mind to do some sort of movement, all the time. And I think what's necessary is motivation. And you have to, and that's an individual thing. You have to have your own motivation. For me, it's a couple of things. Number one, if I'm not healthy, I can't do my work. And if you guys know anything about Nathaniel Hawthorne, was it Herman Melville? I think it was Herman Melville who made himself sick writing Moby Dick, right?
Hmm.
He was sitting and writing hours and hours at a time. There's that. Second of all, it bothers me how many African Americans, especially African American artists, die way too soon.
Yeah.
And um, I just went to a funeral a couple of weeks ago for one of my cousins that passed away. I mentioned my sister who died was not even a year younger than I am. She died in her mid 40s, right? So to me, it's no joke. You know, bad stuff runs in our family. There are people with heart disease and diabetes and all of these things. So it's a necessity, right? And it only is even more important as I get older.
Right.
So it's just a given. It's non-negotiable. So
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you. Yeah, it's a non-negotiable, like you're saying.
yeah,
Hypertension, diabetes, heart
yeah,
disease, no, gotta do it.
yeah,
That's a
yeah,
motivation in of itself.
yeah. And some of these things is as you know, like it's like it can come up even if you're taking good care of
Even if
yourself.
you're, that's right.
So it's like think about how much worse it can be if you don't,
Not doing anything.
right?
Right.
You have no running chance to overcome
Right.
an illness. So
Right.
got to stay ahead of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Stay ahead of it, Denise. Joanna.
Yes, thank you for sharing your experience. I have two questions. One is, yeah, it's both are about the process of working on a story or fiction. One is, well, this is my question. When I write my story, sometimes I have doubt. Well, I feel well. The story came to me, and I put it on the page. But I'm not sure if this makes sense only to me or others. Yeah, right. But it naturally came, so I put it down, and I have no way to change it. It's like that. So I wonder if you have this experience and how do you help yourself or think through situation like this. And the second one is, do you have like regular readers who read your draft before it's finished, or you wait till the end to share? Thank you.
Well, first of all, you've kind of answered your own question. You have to have
Okay.
readers, right, to tell you whether or not something makes sense,
Okay.
right? Because I know what you mean. Like you think, and I've done this with students where they bring me something and they'll say, well, this is about this and this and this and this. And I'll say, okay, you realize none of that is on this page, right? So we think that it's in our head that it's on the page and it's not necessarily true. So it's important. Even if you think, I mean, nothing is not editable, right? Even if it came to you magically, that doesn't mean that it can't be improved. Um,
Mhm.
that doesn't mess with the magic of it. And I think that being afraid in that way usually means that a writer doesn't have a grasp of craft,
Mm.
right? You don't, and I say this personally because this was before I got my own MFA degree. And I became an MFA student after I'd already written my first novel. But I felt that that novel was like an airplane I built in my garage, right, by myself, that I knew it flew, but I didn't have a sense of why it was good or even what to do for the next book. And that was really because I didn't understand craft. And someone once said to me that I have to respect my magic. But in order to do that, I have to understand what my magic is.
Mm.
So if you learn craft, you know, just like Stephen King says, understand what's in your toolbox and putting your tools in the toolbox, then you will know how to work with it. You will know how to use your words. You'll know how to create with more intention. If something does show up magically, you'll know how to work with it. It won't seem like this thing that is just beyond you, right? It came from you, then it's like the clay is in your hands and you can make something with it. Asking about readers, at this point, my readers are generally my editor and my agent. There are a couple of people that I would show something to before it's done, especially with nonfiction, because sometimes that can be that kind of thing where I'm trying to tell you something that's going on inside my head, and it may not have translated on the page. But yeah, I wouldn't say picky, but it can be hard to find good readers because especially if you already know how to write, and this is why some students show up in MFA programs, you can end up with readers who believe that something is good just because one sentence follows another, and it's well written in that you don't trip over it when you read it. But they can't tell you whether or not the thing is doing the thing that you want it to do because they don't read that way.
Mm.
So finding the right readers is a tricky thing and an important thing. And once you find them, you know, you'll see that writers tend to stick together when you have good readers. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Good. Lisa, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have several. But I think I want to ask the selfish one about writing. Do you, when writing nonfiction, maybe especially, yeah, I struggle with trying to get a rough draft complete without editing as I go. You talked about being project oriented, and that's kind of clicking in my brain that it's almost like I want to finish a section or really shape it, rough it out before I move on to the next one because it takes a lot to get your head in that space. Do you have any thoughts on that or how your process?
One of the reasons why it's hard for me to do NaNoWriMo is because I have a hard time just sitting there and generating that messy first draft, right? I'm trying to do that more. I'm constantly, even at this stage in my life and my career, that is something that I want to do because I want to generate things more quickly because I love rewriting. Rewriting is so much better than writing. But my process is slow. I write by hand a lot. And that even that alone is like writing by hand. And then you have to type it all in. And then, right. So I'm trying to be better at going faster. And that would be figuring out how to do those messy first drafts. So I'm trying. I'm trying.
Thanks.
You can ask another question, Lisa.
Can I? Yeah. Okay, that would be good. You were talking about the value of self-reflection and how that comes in the writing process,
Yeah.
which I felt like that was really to understand that there is possibly more going on than you even think, and to let that happen. That does sound scary and really exciting as well. But then there's also the self-reflection that happens from somebody who is reading and learning to read well. And I feel like that is such an um, important thing as human beings. And I actually, it was just this last weekend or 2 weekends ago, was leading a workshop and thinking about that a lot, about how do you help people learn to be self-reflective? So maybe how do you do that with writers to help develop that skill?
Well, that's something we worked on, Adrian, didn't we, in the workshop? Um, it's a matter of knowing what questions to ask, right? And I believe, Adrian, I even gave you guys a list of questions, including some that I mentioned here. Why am I writing this? Who was I before the thing happened? Who am I now? How do I feel about the people that I'm writing about? Is this wound fresh? It doesn't mean that you can't write about it if it's fresh, but be aware, because writing about something in the moment where there's that fresh anger is very different from writing from a point of reflection. So it's about asking the questions, but it's also about, we talk about journaling, right? So if you journal, you're already in a process of paying attention to how you think and how you view the world, right? I think journaling, however, it helps you. I think we put too much emphasis on thinking that we have to have these elaborate diary entries, but it can be as simple as thinking about what you wore today, what was the weather like, and how it made you feel. And sometimes that leads to an even deeper reflection, but to let the journaling be what it will be. Um, it's also a good point of research when you go back to write about something. If you've already journaled it, right, you have a place to start. I started a few years ago, I started printing up my social media feeds, specifically Facebook, because I realized that it is a curated aspect of my life. And it's hard to go through Facebook and scroll back several years, but if you print it up, there's a wonderful website. It's called mysocialbook.com. And you print it up and you can flip through it and see what was going on. And what's amazing about it is that you will find moments, at least for me, that in the context of things have a deeper meaning. So here's an example. When I started writing about Sandy Hook, I went back and looked through my Facebook feed, and the day before the shootings, it was a Thursday, my son was in the children's choir at church. So we were at church and he was in rehearsals, and I was across the hall in the church library doing some work. And I wrote in my Facebook that I was sitting here listening to the children sing my favorite Christmas carol, "O Holy Night." And I wrote, "Life is good," right? So that moment alone is yes, a nice poignant moment, but then to look at it in light of what happened the very next day, right? Then it's a different look. It's a different thing to ponder as I'm writing, right? To see where I was the day before and to see where I was the day after, right? So you're looking for just every little tidbit that seems like nothing tells you something about where you were on any given day, right? And that's important.
Yeah. I just want to say that I really appreciate hearing you speak about your work, because I feel like uh, art of all different disciplines does this task, this work in our lives, and so many of us are not even aware of how much that, and I feel like even as artists sometimes we're not aware of impact of what it is that art can do, and this helping us see things with fresh eyes or put things in context or become self-reflective. And I think that's another gift that you have, of just articulating why and how you do what you do. So I really appreciate that.
Well, I think it's important that we all respect what we do as artists, right? Because we don't know. To me, and I may have said this in class, Adrian, if you're not doing your work, then someone like me as a reader, I lose the opportunity
Right.
to be changed by what you do.
Right.
Wild, Beautiful, and Free, some of the like Amazon and Goodreads reviews, there were people talking about that book, several people who've said that they can't stop reading it, right? They read it over and over again. Now, to me, you know, it would be easy to say, oh, wow, I must have wrote a really good book. It's not about that. They're doing that because they see something of themselves in that book,
Yeah.
and there's something that they're trying to work through, right? And that's huge. All I can do is write the book and let it go. But that is a really amazing thing. And I think it's worth the work to sit here and figure out stuff, even if, you know, the publisher's not going to take it or they don't like this, but to get something published and then to have it do its work, that's amazing, blessed thing. And I can only stand back and say, thank you. Okay, let's, now I'm on to the next thing. I have to keep working.
Mm. Wow. Wow, Sophronia, thank you so much. I always want to be true to the time. It's 6:01 here in the East Coast. And I just so much appreciate you. I appreciate your work. I appreciate the way you do it. And I appreciate you gifting us with being able to experience intentional living in how you are really doing your work, that it really is changing people's lives. And I so appreciate that. And what you do, even your little talks that you do once a week on Facebook, your posts, and I really thank you for being who you are. And I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us. And this was just, it was remarkable. So,
Thank you, Adrian. Thank you for having me.
well, thanks. Lisa, could you just do a quick prayer for Sophronia and the work that she's doing, and we could close out after this.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
God, it is such a gift to be able to work in concert with you, in partnership with you, in creative acts. And I thank you for people like Sophronia, who are not only using their gifts, using her gifts in such free and faithful ways, but also making herself available to teach and to lead others to do the same. I pray that you would continue to bless people through her work, and that you would bless her in the act of creating. I thank you for her perspective and her willingness to share so much of herself through both her work and her time. And so I just pray so many blessings over her. And thank you as we go into this week. Help us to continue to pray that that the work of our hands would convey the will of your heart. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
And
Thank you,
thank you
Adrian.
all for coming in this busy weekend. And may you all have a blessed holiday season. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you in July, Sophronia.
Thank you.
At the Glen. So God bless.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Bye, everybody. Thank
Sophronia.
you.
Thank you.